So in this new video, we are gonna show how to configure a feature which is available on CloudFlare, which is, I believe, gonna be very interesting to most of the users that expose local services hosted on their network to the internet. So for that, we start by very quickly starting a tunnel, as we have done in previous videos. I will leave you a link here. So we access our CloudFlare dashboard, where we can see the two top-level domains that we have added for free, these two here. We are going to be accessing the Zero Trust dashboard, which is a different dashboard in which you can configure the security of the accesses. So here on the tunnels, we can see the different tunnels that we have set up in the previous videos. So this one here, which is inactive at the moment, is linked to several domains that we have created, several CNAMEs. This here is the last that we created on a different video. So now we are gonna create very quickly a new host that is the one that I'm gonna be using for this demo. Let's choose a new subdomain. Let's call it Syno. This is the top-level domain that I'm gonna be using, and this is the ingress rule that I'm gonna be using to get access to my local network. This is the port that I'm using for my Synology NAS. So when I create the host name, I can get back to CloudFlare console under DNS. You will see that it is automatically created. It is pointing to this tunnel. As I said, all the details you can find on previous videos. If we start the tunnel now, we are going to be able to get access to my local server, but from the internet. Using this domain, this host name here. So let's just show how can you get access to it through CloudFlare. So as you can see here, I'm getting access to my Synology, and I'm accessing through an SSL connection through CloudFlare with a valid certificate without opening any port. Now, there is one problem with this configuration, and it is that anybody who is aware of this URL would be able to get access, direct access to your service. So in this particular case, the service is the web interface of my Synology NAS. And I don't want this to be accessible to anyone. So I want to have an additional layer of security to get into this page. For that, CloudFlare offered us this option here called under access, called applications. If you go under this, you can get all this reference to essentially an access control. So if you choose here self-hosted, you can define an application that you are hosting. You can define a session duration. For this example, I'm going to choose 1 week, whatever. You can define the URL that you want to deploy this access control. In this case, it's the subdomain that I have just created before. Well, there are some other options here. And we will be covering all these topics. And what you see here is that we are gonna ask for a one-time identification number to get access to that URL. So right after you create the app, you have to define a policy. We give the policy a name, an action is going to be allow. The session duration is going to remain the same as the session timeout that we have set just before. And now here we define some rules. So the selector that I'm going to be using in this first example is going to be an email. And I'm going to define the email that is going to be receiving the authorization codes that are going to be requested to access my application. Underneath, you can find additional settings that we are not going to be covering on this example. We click next, and well, again, these are more advanced configurations that you can use to protect the access to your application. Again, I'm not going to be using any of these, and we click Add Application. So now that we have saved this application and its configuration, what you will see when you refresh the page is all the setup that we have created with all the different components, the URL that we are going to be using, the type of application, an ID, a date of creation, and all the rest. So what it is interesting for you to see is that when you try to access the same URL that we used before, look what happens now. So essentially you're going to be prompted with a code that has to be emailed to somebody who has been included into the policy. If I click send, I have to open my email account here in ProtonMail in my case. Just put my username and password, and I will be receiving an email with a code that I have to include on my login page. So I want to keep me sign in. I put my password, sign in. And here is the email that I have been sent. So if we copy the code here and paste it here, now I'm going to be getting into the same page, but this time only the people who has this code is going to be able to access the service that I have exposed previously. Okay, just now let me show you one particular thing of all this access protection that CloudFlare Zero Trust dashboard allows you. For once, if you go here, you can see that I have defined a team domain. This is something which you just edit, and you can choose whatever you want as long as it is not used by somebody else. And if you go here under authentication, you can see here that by default the login method that is going to be used is this one-time password or one-time code that I have been showing you before. But there are a bunch of other different services that you can use. So for example, if we choose GitHub, we can essentially federate the access to our resource with our account in GitHub. So for those of you who has not done this before, let me show you how you can create a client ID. A client is essentially, in this context, is the application that you are going to be allowing to federate with your account. So you go here under developer settings and all of apps, we can register a new application. So the application that we're going to register is going to be CloudFlare Zero Trust Access. Let me give it a name here. This is going to be test whatever. So the URL that you're going to be using is the one that I showed you before, which is the this one here. So this is the team name that you can define for your own account. In my case, it was LU4T, and we just give it a description, whatever it is. This is a test. So this is the callback URL. The callback URL is something that you're going to be getting from here. This is just including the team domain that you used before with a given path here. So you just copy, put here your team domain, and that's it. So we're ready to go. We click here on enable device flow. This is not needed, but just. So as you see here, you get a client ID. This client ID is the unique identifier of the application we are going to be using, which is Zero Trust Access. Let's give it, yeah. So, and then there is this client secret. The client secret is something that you need to generate for each application which you want to federate here. So we get one secret, we copy it, paste it here, we click save, and I mean, if you follow all these steps, you're ready to go. You can just well, click here to finish setup. Here you're gonna be saying from GitHub you're granting access to CloudFlare access, and from this moment in time, you're good to go. Now, see here what it is going to happen now. Now we have added a second login method, and this login method is going to be GitHub. So we do this test just to make sure that everything is configured correctly. So now if I get back to my application and I hit edit and go into the configuration, so we have here the two authentication methods defined. We're going to choose the one that we have just created, GitHub. We save the application with this method. So essentially you see that this is the application and the URL that we have defined before, and now we're going to test how this access is going to be. For that we will open an incognito window here. And we copy the same URL. Now, look what happens now. So we have switched from the previous method in which we were receiving an email with a code into this one here. So that is how easy is it to define additional layers of security. So when you have created these different methods, the good thing is that you can use them at your desire. So if we go now and on this same application, we revoke the existing tokens first. This is something that we need to do if we don't want to be prompt again. And we click again. You see here that we just switch from the previous code into the new method that we have defined. So again, we can select all of them now, so that the user that is trying to access the service can choose between the two methods that we have defined for this given application. So again, we refresh the page, and now you see here that both methods are available to access your, in this case, your DSM web interface. So I think that is all for this video. I strongly recommend you use this access control method on your services, on the ones that you decide to expose through CloudFlare. Not because CloudFlare is not securing the access enough, because they do have, more than the average controls that we have at home, but because it is going to provide you an additional level of security. It's going to be extremely easy to configure, as you just saw, and obviously you will be even better protected if you follow all these steps. So I'm gonna be removing all this stuff because I don't want anybody to try to access my local services. I'm revoking the session, as I have done previously, and we will also make sure that all the ingress resources that I have defined on my channel are also removed, so that anybody watching this video has no thoughts of trying to access my lab services. I did all these steps on previous videos. You can check them on the link that I'm gonna leave you. It is quite easy to just, switch off all the connections that we have used for the recording of this video. Essentially, I will remove this host that I have created before, and by switching off the channel also, you will prevent anybody from accessing. Obviously I recommend you don't show all this internal configuration to anybody, and if you do, please set up these access controls that I have just shown you, because even if anybody is aware of all these hosts and domains, without these access tokens, they won't be able to get access to you. So I hope you like the video, and we'll see you again very soon.